Right, shalom, shalom, Boker Tov. We are here again for our Shaar, HaPesukim studies. Always exciting. Just pulling up the pages. Toda Rabah, Nasikabina, Toda Rabah, Rabanet Shalva for joining. And to everyone, please keep a Koti Tula in your prayers. Have a procedure this morning. We know that Hashem for the relief. I'm going to go back and review some of the things we began to touch on last time, just because this is so crucial. My apologies, I am back. So the text should be up on the screen, and we are going to run back through a little bit of what we covered last time to make sure there's understanding on some points that I may have mentioned, but would like to make clearer. And if I didn't mention them, I want to remember to mention them this time. All right, so so what's always important to remember is structure. The structure of the Sefirot, Olamot, and the HaPesukim. Remembering the idea of pantheon. When we think of the HaPesukim, we can think of a concept of a pantheon. However, not in the idea of a pantheon from a perspective of Avodah Zarah, Chas v'Shalom, but understanding this family of sorts. Understanding the interrelation between the Olamot, the Sefirot, and the HaPesukim. And I'm just going to bring up this image as a refresher. So to really understand Torah in all its faces and facets, as literally HaPesukim refers to the faces. So understanding Torah in all its dimensions requires this fundamental comprehension of this structure, knowing that this is the structure of the cosmos as born from the Tzimtzum, the phenomenon of the Tzimtzum, the dissemination of the light of Or Ein Sof through the Kav. Remember that androgynous corkscrew-like structure, also reminiscent of the letter Lamed in Kitab Ashuri, the Lamed that looks, interestingly enough, a lot like a pregnant woman, if you think of it. But the androgyny of the Shaar, the linear, upright, masculine nature of the Vav, and the igul, the feminine circular nature of the kaf. So the letters kaf and vav, 26, make up the shape of the lamed. And we know 26 is the gematria of Hashem, Yod Ke Vav Ke. From this, we can see the remez, the hint of the kav, the line, the pipe of creation through which Oren Sof, the vital force, was disseminated and spread throughout the Sephirot as midot and as olamot. So remember, the Sephirot function as midot, character attributes, as emanations of the character of Ein Sof, and the character that we incarnate to cultivate in order to, through our incarnation, emulate our Creator. The Sephirot also function as Olamot and Partsufim. The Partsufim are the names or the roles of the Sephirot as they engage in this reality with the unique dynamics that are between them. The Partsufim, as related to each other, are again as a family of sorts. And all of them are masculine and feminine. Male and female, he created them. This was not just about humankind, Adam Rishon, Hawa Rishon. This was about the Partsufim, the Sephirot. Everything in the universe, in the cosmos, is masculine and feminine, including the Kav and the Kalal, the womb and the pipe. Everything is born of and structured by the union, the yikud of masculine and feminine. The dynamic of all of the Sephirot, the Olamot, the Partsufim, as masculine and feminine. The Kav itself, androgynous, masculine and feminine. The Shaar and igul, the Kalal, the womb from which all of this was born. The Tzimtzum. So again, we know the 4, 5 Olamot, the 4 or 5 letters of the Tetragrammaton. We have entered. Shalom, shalom. Rabbi Chimidia, welcome, welcome.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom.
Baruch Hashem, so good to see you. Toda for joining us. And again, welcome back, Rabbi Shalva. I think I saw Rabbi Prince. Baruch Hashem.
Toda Rabbah, Toda Rabbah.
So we have the Olamot that correspond with the letters of the Tetragrammaton. We know everywhere again that we see 4 is really 5. So we have the Vav, which is Atzilut, the Hey, which is Beria. I'm sorry, did I say Vav or Yud? Let's start over. We have the Yud, which is Atzilut, the Hey, which is Beria, the Vav, which is Yesera, the Hey, which is Asiya. And we also know, of course, the hidden 5th, the Yud, the crown of the Yud, is the Olam Adam Kadmon. So in terms of the Sephirot, the Partufim. The Yod corresponds with, again, Atzilut, the realm of emanation. And this is Chokmah as Abba. Abba is mirrored in two aspects, Abba Ila'ah and Israel Sabah, higher and lower aspects. Every Partsuf, every Sephira has a higher and lower aspect. A front and a back, we could even say. But as always, remember, in truth, two are one. In the Torah Aleph, there is no duality or plurality. So front and back is one and the same. Upper and lower is one and the same. Masculine and feminine is one and the same. The hidden and the revealed is one and the same. The concealed and the revealed is one and the same. The dark and the light is one and the same. But this is what this seeming duality reflects, these different facets. Abba Ila'ah and Israel Sabah, the two forms or two manifestations of Abba, which is Chokmah, which corresponds with the Yod. We have the He is Ima Ila'ah, and Tevuna, the two aspects. As Bina is Beriya, the Olam of creation. The Vav is Zianapin, which is the six lower Sefirot. Chagat and Nahiyi. Chesed Gevura Tiferet. Chagat is Israel. Nahayi, Netzachot and Yesod, is Yaakov. Zierampin. The Zah, also Hakadosh Baruch Hu. This is the realm of Yetzirah, formation. We have Malkut, the Nukva, the seventh. The Nukva is Leah and Rachel, the wife of Zierampin. Nukva is also Shekinah. Nukva is also Shabbat. And ultimately, in this masculine structure, the top-down linear structure of the Sefirot, when you see things structured from top to bottom, we see high and low. But in reality, Malkut, which seems to be the last or the lowest, in the rectified form, is the crown, Atara, as she ascends and manifests as Bina, Ima, and ultimately as Keter, the crown of her husband. This is the secret of that pasuk. When Malkut rectified and reconciled with Zierampin, she becomes the crown to her husband, and thus is the Keter. So as we heard it said, the last shall be first, the first shall be last. In truth, in the Igul or the Galgal structure of the Sefirot, where everything is in circles, we know that all is equal. So the top and the bottom, again, are one and the same. All points are equal. So Keter and Malkut equally or have the same equal quality of proximity to Ein Sof. We also know that these structures correspond with the elements and the levels of the soul. So we know that we have, again, the Yud, Abba, Chokmah, also corresponds to fire, Esh, and the aspect of the soul that is called Chaya. The Hey, Bina, Ima, Beria is the part of the soul that is Neshama. I'm missing something here. Oh, yes. The aspect of air, ruach. Let me check. This is important to note, this structure. This is why I'm very slowly and emphatically going over it, because this also helps us to understand the structure of the mohin, of the consciousness of the brain. Also divided into 4 parts. And when rectified, it will be 3. But we'll go into that in a little bit. Just 1 second. I just want to make sure we have the correct structure here. Yes. Oh, okay. That's why, my apologies. See, we're not going to go exactly by this image because what Chief Rabbi Pinchas showed us was a little bit different. That's that's why I kind of paused a bit. So I'm gonna go by what Chief Rabbi Pinchas has shown us. Again, the Yod Chokmah Abba is the realm of Atzilut. It is the aspect of the soul that is called Chaya, and it is fire, Esh. Bina, Beria, the Hay that is Ima, is the aspect of the soul that is Neshama, and its element is air, Ruach. Zerampin, which is the Vav. Yetzira is the element of water, Mayim. And it is the aspect of the soul that is the Ruach. And the Hay, the Nukva, the realm of Asiya, of action, is the aspect of the soul that is Nefesh. And it is the element of earth. As we know, Malkut is the earth, is the land, is the kingdom. The feminine is always conceptualized as earth, Sadeh, the field, even the Karka'ah in the aspect that needs to be rectified, and the house, Beit, Bait, the house that is a man's own kingdom. This has always been Malkut, the land, the people, the earth, Asiya, this stage of rectification through physical incarnation. We also want to understand the structure of the brain, the mohin. Now, the brain of Bina, remember, everything is in everything. So every olam, every partsuf, every sephira contains all of the others, and vice versa. I also want to mention that hidden 5th element, the crown of the Yud, the 5th olam, which is Adam Kadmon, that also corresponds to the 5th level of soul, that is Yechidah. Now, in the Shevidat HaKlelim, the shattering of the vessels, all of the worlds, Atzilut, Beria, Yetzira, and Asiya, were broken. However, Ein Sof completely rectified and fixed Atzilut. However, we, through our physical incarnation, becoming vessels as bodies to enact the rectification through the performance and fulfillment of mitzvot, which correspond to our 268 limbs and 365 sinews that comprise our body. Each of the 613 mitzvot corresponding to these parts of our body as a system through which this rectification is enacted in this incarnation. We, through kavanot, mitzvot, tefillot, we perform the rectification for the realms of Beriya, Yetzira, and Asiya. It's our job. And that's a magnificent point to always remember how important we are to fix the entire cosmos, all of creation. So in the Shevirat HaKelim, the death of the seven kings, because of that imbalance, remember the seven kings that died were the ones that did not have a wife. Only the eighth king, the king of rectification, Hadar, was the one who had a wife, Mahatavel. And in that Yikud, in that balance of masculine and feminine, he brought forth that rectification, that perfection. Again, the king that was crowned by the feminine, the Malkut, becoming the Adtara, the Ha-Dara, the crown. So when the seven kings in that imbalance were broken, then the brain of Chokmah, that was supposed to be comprised of three parts, became divided into four, where we have the brain of Bina. Remember, Bina is the understanding, the intelligence that separates, because in order to conceptualize something, you have to compare it to something else, automatically creating division and hierarchy, automatically creating war, in a sense. This is why Bina, even though it is understanding, is comprehension. It is a comprehension based on division that creates a battle, in a sense, cognitive dissonance, what we call cognitive dissonance. Because to understand something, you have to codify it and define it by what it is not. And therefore, you create a duality and a polarity, when in truth, all should be unified as one with wisdom, Chokhmah. So the brain of Bina is divided by four. Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at is divided into two. Da'at contains 5 Chasadim and 5 Gevurot. These are the four mothers. This consciousness is epitomized by the four mothers: Lilith, Na'amah, Machalat, and Agrat. In the brain of Bina, remember the brain of Bina that needs to be rectified. In this brain, Chokmah is Lilith, who needs to be rectified. Lilith is the vessel for the light that is Chawa. Chawa is the light of Atzilut. Remember, Chokmah is Atzilut, but here it corresponds with Lilith that needs to be rectified, the vessel for the light of Atzilut, the vessel that needs to be rectified. Again, thinking of Shevirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. So when that light of Atzilut is not rectified, it manifests as Lilith in that Esh, that fire of anger and arrogance. When it is rectified, however, that fire becomes a fire of truth, of purity, of zeal for righteousness, passion for holiness. In the brain of Bina, the Bina of Bina is Na'amah, the wife of Noach. Na'amah, that element of air. This is the tendency to misuse your words, to gossip, to speak lashon hara. But again, when rectified, that mentality, that character, that midot will be elevated and purified to where we use our words for righteousness, for healing, for rectification, for unification. And the da'at that is divided into two, the right side of da'at with the five chasadim is mahalat, the element of water that corresponds with lust. But when rectified, that lust turns into compassion, empathy, that that need to connect with others, to unify, to harmonize. And the left side of Da'at, which is the five Gevurot, corresponds with Agrat, the daughter of Mahalat, Agrat Bat Mahalat. And that is the element of earth, which brings feelings of depression and sadness and anxiety. When you are depressed, you feel as if you have lost something. You're not good enough. You don't have enough. You're anxious about achieving something that you think you don't have. When that is rectified, when that midah is rectified, you are able to cultivate peace, shalom, shalem, wholeness, and contentment in what you have because you know that abundance is within you. You know that what someone else has is not outside of you. There's no competition, there's no division. There's unity. And in that unity, there's wholeness. And there's no lack, there is no threat, there's no danger to what you have, there's no scarcity that causes you to hold on to something that doesn't serve you. Those are the roots of depression. When that is rectified, then as that corresponds with the element of earth, you truly realize the abundance, the fertility of earth as the kingdom. Again, back to Malkut. That brings contentment instead of depression when it is rectified. So this is the mentality. This is the rectification of the brain, of the mohin, of the consciousness that we enact through cultivating the midot. Again, the sefirot, all of these aspects, emanations, and attributes of Hashem, the vital forces that are the Or Ein Sof that was disseminated through the Tzimtzum. This is the work of rectification on all levels. Rectifying our character, tikkun hamidot. Tikkun hamidot is tikkun ha'olam. Rectifying our character through these attributes, through the sefirot as midot, we rectify the sefirot as olamot. Through understanding our dynamic as the Partsufim. So far, are there any questions? All right. So I'm just checking the chat for when class will start in the rabbinical program. So we have a few more minutes. Understanding that structure, we will go now into the text. All right. So we've been talking about the sin of Adam Harishon in our previous readings. In summary, thus, there were many blemishes that resulted from the sin of Adam Harishon. One was that the Gevurot were no longer sweetened with the Chasadim, the low in the body of Zeir Anpin, as was the case at first. The second was that the strength of Zeir Anpin was weakened to that of the Nukva, and the Gevurot emanated in the place of the Chasadim. The third was that in the beginning, the Chasadim emanated from Chesed until Hod. When the Da'at descended to the Tiferet of Zer, there was no room for emanation except in the last three Sefirot of Netzach, Hod, and Yesod of Zer. I will pause there to say this is part of the secret of the Brit Milah, the sod of the circumcision. In this sin that allowed the Gevurot to descend to the Yesod, the Chasadim could only go to the level of the Netzach and the Hod, from Chesed until the Netzach and the Hod. But they weren't able to reach the Yesod until the circumcision. When the precipice is cut away, then it reveals the crown, which, by the way, is called the Atarat de Yesod. And remember, Malkut, rectified and reunified, reconciled with Ze'arabin, is the crown of her husband. We know that the revealed aspect of the Yesod of man is called a crown, a corona, even in the medical industry. So we know in terms of anatomy, this is the place that is called the crown that is revealed, the corona. Also the head. So it's important to think again of Malkut and Keter being one. She is the crown of her husband, Atara. Atara de Yesod. When this crown is revealed through cutting away the foreskin in the Brit Milah, then the Chasadim, the Chesed, the sweetening element, which, by the way, Chesed is water, the purifying sweetening element that sweetens the Dinim, sweetens the Gevurot, are able to descend to the Yesod, but only after the Brit Milah. Continuing in the text, hence all five Chasadim and the two upper Gevurot called Chasadim and Gevurot remained above in their roots within the Da'at. The three lower Gevurot of Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod alone descended and emanated below to the last three Sephirot, the Netzach, Hod, and Yesod of Ze'er Anpin. Remember, Da'at in the brain of Bina is divided into two, Chasadim and Gevurot, two aspects, two sides. Thus, a brain of four sections. When rectified, however, again, when Lilith is rectified to be the light of Hawa, the light of Atzilut, then that Chokmah is elevated and rises to the level of Adam Kadmon. Again, another reunification, just as Malkut, the Nukva, was reconciled with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Shekinah was rectified with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Nukva, Malkut, was rectified with Ze'er Anpin, Tiferet. Likewise, that rectified Lilith as Chokmah, as Atzilut, ascends to reconcile with and as Adam Kadmon. And then all the other pieces move up accordingly. Thus, then Na'amah, who was Bina, becomes Chokhmah. Mahalat, who was the right side, the Chasadim of Da'at, becomes Bina. And Agrat, who was the left side, the Chasadim of Da'at, becomes one structure of Da'at, one unified structure. So the rectified brain is three parts, Chokmah, Bina, Da'at, and not four. This is also mirrored in the Kabbalat Shabbat. So this is also why we call Shabbat as Shekinah, the field of sacred apples. On Shabbat, all of the olamot, the Sefirot, ascend a level. So Nahi, Netzachot, and Yesod, they go up and become Chagat, Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferet. The original Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferet go up to become Chokmah, Bina, Weda'at, and so on and so forth. And that space that is vacated, that halal, that space that is left, becomes sanctified as Shabbat. Sadeh, the field of sacred apples, the Shekinah, the Malkut. And it is in this field that we welcome Kabbalat Shabbat in the sanctification and blessing of the moon. Going back to the text, thus the Gevurot of Tiferet went down to the Yesod of Zer. It has two levels because the Atra, the crown of Yesod of Ima, finishes at the end of the upper third of the Yesod of Zeir Anpin. Let me zoom in a bit. As mentioned previously, and therefore a third of the light of the Gevura that descended there was covered. Only 2/3 of the light of Gevura inside the bottom 2/3 of Yesod are revealed lights, causing the judgments to become stronger. Remember, everything is in everything. Everything is in everything in this structure. So we understand this when we even say that the Nahiyi, the Netzachot and Yesod, the two thighs and the Yesod of Ima create the Chabad, the Keter, the Chokmah Bina Weda'at of Zeir Anpin. And likewise, every Sephira that is below the next Sephira, the top third is the bottom third of the previous one, if that makes sense. So they're always connected. The seventh blemish is mentioned in Sefer HaZohar, the Zohar, that Adam HaRishon sinned with respect to the Nukva. The matter was explained above regarding the second and sixth blemish, that it means that Adam sinned with respect to the male, weakening its strength and turning it to the level of the Nukva. Now we will explain it, and this will clarify the seventh blemish and the eighth blemish after it. The seventh blemish was to Leah, the wife of Zeir Anpin. She is his Nukva. Remember, Leah and Rachel are the upper and lower aspects of Nukva, Malkut, as we saw on that picture earlier. The seventh blemish was to Leah, the wife of Zeir Anpin. She is his Nukva. The eighth blemish was to Rachel, the Nukva of Zeir Anpin. And this is the explanation. In the beginning, when the Da'at of Zeir Anpin and the Yesod of Ima were above in the head, the Malkut of Ima, which is the Ateret HaYesod, the crown of Yesod. Remember, Malkut is the crown. The Malkut of Ima, which is the crown of Yesod, Ateret HaYesod, emanated to the chest of Zeir Anpin. Leah was built from this Malkut of Ima, literally behind her, until the chest of Zeir Anpin, Achoraim. I'll just pause to note Leah corresponds with Lilith, the Sitra Akra. They call Lilith the mother of the Achoraim, the mother of the Sitra Akra. When the Da'at descended, the Yesod and the Atara of Ima also descended. So Leah also descended correspondingly at the back of Zeir Anpin. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Karka'ah, the Sadeh, and the house, the different levels of structure of the feminine. At one point when she is being built, when she is being rectified, she stands only to the back of the Netzachot and Yesod of Zeir Anpin. So her head, her crown, her Chokmah Bina, and Da'at, literally her brains are being built from the yesod of Zeir Anpin. But eventually, yes, masculine and feminine become equal, crown to crown, head to head, face to face. And she stands at the same level as him. But when she's being built, this diminished aspect, she rises only to the yesod of Zeir Anpin. When the Da'at descended, the Yesod and the Atara of Ima also descended. So Leah also descended correspondingly at the back of Zeir Anpin. She emanated from the chest, which is at the end of the upper third of Tiferet until the upper third of Yesod of Zeir Anpin, because the Malkut also emanates until that point of Ima as mentioned. Thus, Leah is one complete measure, the last 2/3 of Tiferet and the upper third of Yesod. She too descended from her place and stood in Rachel's place from the chest of Zeir Anpin downward. This is a blemish for Leah. The eighth blemish. The eighth blemish was to the Partsuf Rachel, and it resulted from what was just mentioned. Now notice, remember that picture again, Leah and Rachel. Leah is actually the higher aspect. Rachel is the lower aspect. Leah again corresponds with Lilith. Also Dinah is embodied in this aspect of the Partsuf. Dinah and Dinim. So the eighth blemish was to Partsuf Rachel, and it resulted from what was just mentioned, that Leah ended up opposite the place of the Yesod of Ima behind Zeir Anpin. She descended and took Rachel's place, causing Rachel to leave the end of the upper third of the Yesod of Zeir, because that is where the Yesod of Ima and the legs of Leah come to an end. It is also where Rachel begins, and therefore there was no longer room in the world of Atzilut for Rachel to emanate. As known, the legs of Zeir of Atzilut go down to the division between Atzilut and Beriah, as mentioned in Parshat Ki Titse, regarding the mitzvah of the Petapet. This forced Rachel to emanate her legs into the world of Beriah. This is the sod of the verse, her legs hang down to death, in Mishli, or Proverbs 5:5, which, by the way, 5 is hey. 5 is always associated with the feminine, the hidden aspect. Ima and Malkut are both hey, which is 5, and here we have her legs hang down in death in Mishli 5:5. Because the klipot, called death, are in Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya, but not in Atzilut, chas v'shalom. God forbid. This is what we talked about in the beginning. With the Shevirat HaKelim, with the shattering of the vessels, all of the olamot were broken. But Atzilut only was fully rectified and fixed and restored and purified by Ein Sof. Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya still have to be rectified. They still have aspects of what we call impurity, or things that need to be rectified in Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Thus, the blemish to Rachel was the greatest of all, based upon the blemish to the Nukva mentioned in the Zohar. It has been explained how the sin of Adam Harishon that he alone committed caused many types of blemishes, alluded to in Sefer HaZohar and Tikkunim, or Tikkunei Zohar, in different statements that seem to contradict one another. All of them are now well understood as we have written. The births of Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel, will be clarified at the end of this discussion. See there. Woo! Baruch Hashem. So that's a lot of information. We want to digest this. This is why our Shaar HaPesukim study is usually a little shorter than the others. A lot to digest. So this is our reading for today. We will reconvene next week. Bezrat Hashem. Toda Rabbah for joining us.
Thank you.
Besimka, Reverend Shava. Besimka, Nasika Bina, Shalom, Shalom. Nasika Bina, Shalom, Shalom. Akoti Amaya, Shalom, Shalom. Rabbi Chimidia, Shalom, Shalom. Rabbi Shava. Torah Rabbi for joining today.
Rabbanit, would you be so kind? I couldn't see the page on. I'm trying to enlarge the picture. What page were you in the book?
Yes. Today we read page 35, 36, and 37, and I can also leave it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Okay, and
Besimka.
thank you for giving us space to digest.
Yes, yes, yes. Besimka, Besimka.
Yes.
Shalom, shalom, and Shavua Tov. Have a beautiful day, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.